Hey guys, so I've been wanting to make this video for a while and finally I'm getting around to doing it properly. I filmed this 3 different times and then just never posted it or hated what I filmed, so just scrapped the idea, and finally I'm like, I need to post something today because today, October 6th, is World Cerebral Palsy Awareness Day. And for those who don't know, I actually have cerebral palsy. So it's not really something that, it's not something that I hide, especially if you know me in person, but it's not something I've spoken about in great detail before. And I guess there's shame having a disability growing up, whether it be physical or mental. You just want to be normal. And I've sort of tried to hide my disability as much as possible. Like, I'm ashamed to admit when someone says, "Oh, I didn't even know you had cerebral palsy." There's a part of my brain that's like, "Oh, well, it's working," you know, like, yes, I've achieved what I wanted to do in being normal. That's a crap way to live life. And I think our differences are what makes us special. And so I'm here to talk about the fact that I've got cerebral palsy, and a little bit about what it is, because I think a lot of people still are either have no idea what it is or really misinformed. Cerebral palsy is the most common physical disability in children in Australia. Every 15 hours, someone is born with cerebral palsy. It's caused by physical trauma to the brain, whether that happened in the womb, shortly after birth, or I think it's up to the age of 2 years old. And that brain damage is permanent and unchanging. There's a few different types of cerebral palsy, but the one that I'm going to focus on today is the one that I've got, just obviously because it's the one that I can speak about the most. The type of cerebral palsy I have is called spastic hemiplegia. Yes, that's where the insult spastic comes from. Much like insults like retard, it came from making fun of people with disabilities. So if you're watching this and you use the word spastic, can you do me a favor and just replace it with drongo or something? The word spastic actually means tightness of the muscles. The brain damage I have goes down my right side, so hemiplegia means just one side affected. My cerebral palsy was caused by an accident in the hospital when I was born. I was born premature at 27 weeks. The hospital that I won't mention made a number of errors, which meant that I got really sick and a blood vessel burst in my brain, which caused the cerebral palsy. I weighed 2.5 pounds. I was told it was actually quite big for the term that I was born at. I was supposed to be born in May and I was born in February, which to this date is the only time that I've ever been early for anything in my entire life. If you know me, I'm always late. So the fact that I was that early is just freaking laughable, to be honest. Is I have bad balance, and when I say bad balance, I'm talking a gust of wind could knock me over. I trip over absolutely everything. I have knees of steel. Cerebral palsy means falling over is a way of life. Like, you got no idea, man. We are absolute pros of tripping over nothing. There might be like the slightest uneven bit in the concrete. We will find it and we will fall over it. We might have like not tied our shoe up tight enough. The shoelace comes undone a little bit. We will trip over that. I've tripped over my own feet before. I've tripped over, like, I've got a bloody slipper next to me. I've tripped over that slipper 3 times today, but I'm a pro at it and I'm graceful and I'm just like, oh, here we go again. The amount of pant knees that I've put holes in, I'm keeping the brand Band-Aid in absolute business. Like, they should honestly sponsor me. If I became famous one day and they said, "Amy, what would you like? Give me a freaking Band-Aid sponsorship, because that will save me so much money." Do you know how expensive Band-Aids are? And do you know how many you go through when you've got cerebral palsy, which means A, you're falling over constantly, and B, you've got stupid feet that get blisters every 2 seconds because you've got no circulation. So your feet rub on all of your shoes and you're just blister city every day. Thank you, Band-Aid. You're a godsend and I love you. I have bad coordination, so terrible at sports, was always chosen last at school, and I walk with a limp. So that used to be a lot worse, and I've had surgeries to correct it. So when I want to say 6, but I could be making this up, somewhere around the 5-6 mark, I started having Botox injections. Yes, the same ones that people have in their face. That meant that it would relax the muscles in my leg. When I was born, I would walk on my tiptoes. So I'm going to play some video footage here, but I would walk up on the toe, and the Botox would mean that the muscles would relax because my brain doesn't connect properly to my muscles. When I was 10, I had tendon lengthening surgery. Now this was pretty major. They took my Achilles tendon, they cut some slits in it, and then they stretched it out to make it less tight, so that now permanently, after many years, I don't walk my tiptoes, but I do walk with a limp. The surgery was really, really painful. I was in a cast for quite a while. I had to learn to walk again. It really sucked. It was really traumatic. It's a lot better now. I think one thing that's a bit different about my cerebral palsy is my hand isn't very affected. So cerebral palsy is, like a lot of other disabilities, a bit of a spectrum. So on one end, if it is quite severe, you'll see a lot of people in wheelchairs. They have personal care needs met for them by a carer, can't feed or talk properly, whereas I'm on the lower end of the scale, so have mild side effects. But a lot of people with cerebral palsy have the same tightening of muscles that I have in my leg in their arm as well, so they may hold their hand like this, have it quite tight, and don't have much movement or dexterity at all. So I'm really lucky in that aspect that I do have most of the function of both of my hands. My arm isn't affected, but it is a lot weaker than your stock standard arm. So I find that when I do get tired, it does sort of, I'll be standing in front of the mirror like this. When I was little, I did it a lot more often, and my mum, no one called Child Protection Services, but she used to safety pin my t-shirts to my pants to stop me from pulling it up. But it worked. I was really lucky to have the early intervention that I did. When I was younger, my mum quit her job for the first few years of my life and was able to get me physical therapy, movement therapies, any sort of therapies that she could possibly find. She put me into any sort of trial programs she could put me into. I'm really grateful. When I was younger, my tongue was paralyzed. I didn't have a speech impediment or anything like that, but again, it was just a lot weaker than the rest of my body. I had to do a series of therapies on it. I had to do this, like one that I really remember very, very strongly, in that they put hundreds and thousands around my top lip, and I had to just lick them off constantly just to build up the muscles in my tongue. Now can do this. I do have a bad back from the way that I walk. That will always be with me, unfortunately, just because I'm uneven on my feet. I put my back out all the time. Also, another thing which is super tiny, but something I just want to put out on the record: if you ever see me wearing ugly shoes, it's because I can't wear nice shoes. I can't wear any sort of nice heels because I can't walk in them. I put holes in my shoes constantly. So for example, if I buy a brand new pair of Vans, they last me maybe 3 months because the way that I walk is so uneven. I get holes in the bottom of them and have to replace them. So I always have ugly shoes on, and it's just a thing. And I'm really grateful though, because in the scheme of things, like ugly shoes versus can walk, it's a no-brainer. I think in order to be honest and open and tell this story correctly, I need to show something that I'm very self-conscious in. And I'm not being funny here, I'm actually really self-conscious of my feet. It's a bit of a sick joke. This bit is funny. I've got my dad's ugly feet, which are like bloody bricks with 0 toe length and just really ugly. And then on top of that, I've got a deformed foot. So I've got the world's ugliest feet, but I'm going to show you them anyway. If you have a foot fetish, probably watch this because you'll be cured, honestly. You'll be like, feet are gross, I never want to see that again. So these are my feet. As you can see, this is my normal foot, which is disgusting in itself. And this is my cerebral palsy foot. So you can see that it is turning out, and I will need surgery to correct it, which I should have had 12 months ago, but I'm currently putting off. To be honest, I'm quite scared to have the surgery. They put a rod under your toe and it straightens it up. I don't want to learn to walk again, and surgery sucks. A couple of things that I've never been able to do and will never be able to do just because of my disability is go for a run and ride a 2-wheeler bike, just a standard bike. And I think sometimes that it sounds so stupid, but it gets me down because I'm like, far out. I wish I could just go for a run, put on some headphones, like I'd be so freaking fit, but I can't. And sometimes I feel crap about it, which, you know, sounds stupid, but you think about the things that you can't do and will never be able to do. But then if I'm in that space where it's all I can fixate on is everything that's wrong with me, everything that's different. So I think about people who can't talk, who can't, you know, care for themselves. And I'm just so lucky. Just the fact that I only had just a small amount of brain damage versus maybe a tiny bit more has given me so many freedoms that other people just don't get. So I'm really grateful for that. This is for all of my people, all my peeps that have a disability out there, a physical disability. How freaking funny is it when someone goes to you, why are you limping? Like, yeah, I've got cerebral palsy. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh, I shouldn't have asked that. Oh, did I offend you? Oh my God. I'm so sorry. I should not have asked that. I didn't mean to offend you because you've got a lifelong condition and you just mentioned it. It's just the look on their face is pure bliss because they are so uncomfortable and I could care less. They don't know how to react. And it's so funny. Am I right? Like, for me anyway. But I really enjoy it. So please ask me about my disability and get really uncomfortable about it because it's great. It's great for me. It's not for you, but it is for me. If you want to know more about cerebral palsy or you're just curious, there is an amazing show on Netflix right now called Special. The writer and creator and main actor is a guy by the name of Ryan O'Connell, and he actually has cerebral palsy. Not only that, he's another minority in that he's a gay man. It's really, really funny. It's really well written and I absolutely love it. And then there is RJ Mitty, Breaking Bad. Amazing. I think there needs to be more females, clearly, with cerebral palsy that are in shows. Another piece of essential viewing that I would recommend is a documentary called Camp Crip, produced by Michelle Obama as well. So, you know, basically it's about a summer camp in the 70s in America where families would send their children with disabilities and they would basically have the time of their lives. A lot of illegal activity went down, a lot of hooking up. Then the second half of that documentary, a few of the people who went to that summer camp then went on to become political leaders and fight for rights of people with disabilities and were really instrumental in the implementation of the Discrimination Act. The Disability Discrimination Act has only been around in Australia since 1992, which I had no idea about until I watched this documentary. The Disability Discrimination Act basically means that people with disabilities can't be discriminated against in job settings, that places in public need to have all accessible toilets, that they need to have lifts, they need to have entry points for wheelchairs. Basic human rights like that have only been around since 1992. It's amazing. I highly recommend it. And yeah, it's raining really heavy all of a sudden, so I'm going to wrap this up. October 6th, Cerebral Palsy Awareness Day. I hope you learned something. If you have any questions, please let me know. And send some friends with cerebral palsy love today.